Are we facing another summer of chaos? Join me today as I discuss the LA riots, why they're happening, what the potential is, and how we can quell them. This is the David Rutherford Show. Imagine you're a 27-year-old woman from Guatemala or Honduras or El Salvador or Venezuela or Colombia, and you've got your two children, 4 and 8, and you're sitting in the jungles in the Darien Gap, and you're leaving a place where your life has been hell, where you've been assaulted and beaten down, where you can't earn enough money to feed your children or buy them new shoes. And somehow, some way, you were able to scrape together the $3,000 to $4,000 it took to get to that Darien Gap, to where you would pay a coyote, a guide, someone that you've never met, you don't know, to lead you out of that jungle, up the hundreds of miles, thousands of miles, up to the border of Mexico and the United States. And when you finally reach that spot, and you get to the border and you're turned over to the cartels, and you're turned over to another group of men that don't care about you. They don't care about your children. And maybe they even rape your children, or separate you from your children, or they load you up with contraband, fentanyl, methamphetamine, or cocaine, and they load your children up with that too. And you're forced to give them all the remaining money you might have, or you have to sell yourself and work off the debt in order to get them to get you over the border. And when you get over the border, you're going to a station, DHS or Border Patrol, where you're, immediately processed. You're given no phone, you're whatever, and then you have some number that the cartel member gave you, and you give it to them, and they say, okay, and they give you a bus ticket, and the next thing you know, you find yourself in Los Angeles. And they put you in some random house filled with 35 other people, or an apartment filled with 20 people, and they get you some horrible job where you're in some factory stitching clothing, or maybe they make you become a sex worker. And, your children are separated, that they sent to a distant cousin or relative who's in another city, some other place. And then out of the blue, one day, as you're trying to scratch out your existence, trying to fight for a way to be able to reunite with your children, an ICE raid takes place on that factory or that facility, or maybe the parking lot of the Home Depot where you were trying to go and get on as a maid for some cleaning business somewhere. And they pick you up and they detain you and they put you in custody and threaten to deport you. Now, for all of us that hear that story, that's a debilitating story to hear. And it goes against the very principles that really represent the American dream. The ability to come out of nowhere, to come out of that poverty, to come out of that hell, and to some divine way, eke out some type of living and have a better life, in particular for those children. Now, we want to believe that that's what this is all about, that that's what these riots are about. That's what these people who are throwing rocks and bottles and shooting professional grade fireworks at police officers, ICE agents, FBI agents, Homeland agents, sheriffs and LAPD, first responders, firefighters, people on the streets, right? That's what we want to believe this is all about. But unfortunately, we know that's just not the case. We've been through this. We've been through it recently in the summer of 2020 during the George Floyd riots that took place in over 14,000 cities and towns around the country. And we saw that these vandals, these anarchists, the anti-fascists, these people that banded together to burn these cities down, Minneapolis, LA, you name it, all in the name of fighting the man. And I think that's what really stokes the division of the country, is that two things can exist at the same time. And that's what makes this problematic. And that's what makes it difficult for both you and I when we see these things. There's one part of me that is the law-abiding citizen of America, the person that went overseas to fight, that has dead friends to fight for the opportunity of what America represents, which is a nation of laws. And then there's the part of me that's the rebellion, that's the rebel, the people that look back at our founding fathers and how they rebelled against the wrongful overreach of the British government. And I see how those two things are conflicting. But the one thing that I do know is that over the last 4 years, our country has been inundated with millions of new people. Millions of new people have come into this country illegally. They have not followed the process that so many other millions of immigrants throughout our storied history have followed to become U.S. citizens or green card holders or to get appropriate visas so they can come and work. And what I see is the potential for regular people just trying to go about their business in Los Angeles, trying to get home from work or go to work, or some store owner in the areas that are affected, or even have some kind of sympathy for Apple and its mega corporation being looted last night, because I'm sure that's a phenomenal representation of this brutal fight against government overreach to go loot the Apple store. Now, these mostly, in quotation, peaceful protests, yeah, I agree. There's an overwhelming majority of people that are on the streets and they are protesting these, what they believe are unlawful ICE raids or government raids to take people that are just here on asylum or here to escape the atrocities of where they're from. And yes, that makes me feel something. Yes, they have the constitutional right to be able to do that. And I support that 100%. But as soon as you make the decision to turn violent, that's when your rights stop. That's when your rights end. And even in the fact that you're in the country illegally, I lean towards the fact that you've come here illegally and you're putting pressure on the system. You're putting pressure on the system that takes care of other people that are willfully paying their taxes, that are willfully trying to be strong components of our civil society. And that's a powerful thing that we need to all get behind. Yeah, I'm all for your ability and your First Amendment rights if you're a U.S. citizen. I'm also for your First Amendment rights to speak your mind and to say what you believe is true and to tell us your story. But as soon as that threshold is crossed, where violence and the destruction of property, other people's property, and more importantly, the dangers of people that have sworn an oath to protect the public, law enforcement officers, firefighters, and even National Guards and these young Marines that are out there to support quelling these riots, as soon as you cross that threshold, all bets are off. Because somewhere, somehow, I'm not sure what's going on. I've seen multiple videos on X over the last couple of days, in particular from Nick Shirley, who I believe is one of the most phenomenal reporters in the world today. You should follow him on X. He's been on the streets watching and witnessing. He had this wonderful video of a young person. They weren't young. They said they were 40, screaming at the top of their lungs that America was, the land that is Los Angeles was taken by America. That it's Mexican homeland. It's Mexican land. And that we stole the land from them. And that might be true if you look at it from that perspective. There's also another way to look at it historically, that lands all over the world have been stolen or conquered, if you will. I'm sure the Mexicans had their fair share of conquering other peoples as well, too, like the Native Americans. Maybe they fought prior to getting those lands. Nobody's innocent when it comes to the occupation of other people's homelands. We see that all over the world right now. We look at what's going on in Israel and Gaza. We look at what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. We look at what's going on in different parts of Africa. There's a never-ending cascade of people wanting to occupy other people's lands by force. That's indicative of every single culture, every type of people throughout human history. But what I see that America is America is a place that have been given hundreds of millions of people opportunities they would otherwise not have wherever they're coming from. And so when I see what's going on and I see people in the streets and I see cars burning and I see buildings being lit on fire or destroyed or federal buildings being attacked, essentially what I'm hearing is that you're attacking the very society that you've emigrated into. And there's a nefarious undertone behind that. There's a malevolence, there's a desire, a Machiavellian archetype that wants to destroy the very place that they have come to embody and live in, the very place that affords them the potential opportunities that they want and seek and need. They're out there protesting the very existence of what America is, of what I fought for, of what my friends died for. And that's not okay. And so what I wanted to do today as we begin to evaluate this in a more meaningful way, in a way that can give us a greater context, what I thought I would do is just kind of briefly talk about the history of riots in Los Angeles. And this goes back quite a ways. It goes back initially to the Watts riots that were from August 11th through the 16th in 1965. And these were triggered by the arrest of a 21-year-old African-American who failed a sobriety test and was taken down. Now, the real kind of outcry came from when his mother was involved in the arrest and they were mistreated by the local police who took them down. And out of that, a massive riot took place. When you ask, well, what happened during the riots? I mean, it went on for nights, right? It involved, there were approximately 3,438 to 3,500 people that were arrested, primarily for curfew violations, looting, and arson. There were 34 people that died in this, 23 killed by LAPD and the National Guard. So this is not the first time the National Guard has been called out to help quell riots in Los Angeles. These riots were primarily sparked. Well, let me just talk about property damage. 769 buildings and businesses, with 208 completely destroyed, including 14 public buildings. The damage was an estimated cost of $40 million in 1965, which estimated is about $400 million in today's dollars. Mostly the looting and arson targeted white-owned businesses. And there was a reason for this, right? There was at the time a heavy schism between blacks and whites in that area, all over the United States, right? We had the civil rights movement that was in full swing at the time, Jim Crow laws everywhere around the country. There was a disparage of voting capacity and equal opportunity in business and making and earning a living. And so this built up animosity spilled out into what was considered one of the worst riots in American history, right? The deployment of 16,000 law enforcement, 934 Los Angeles PD, 719 Los Angeles County sheriffs, and National Guardmen, right? And these shocked Los Angeles. Now, fast forward, there were also riots that took place in April 29th to May 4th of 1992, and these are what are widely known as the Rodney King riots. And these happened as a result of four white LAPD officers, Lawrence Powell, Theodore Brazano, Timothy Wind, and Sergeant Stacy Kuhn, being acquitted on excessive force charges, where there was video of them violently beating Rodney King in a traffic stop, which resulted in Rodney King suffering from a skull fracture and other major injuries, which included long-term brain damage. Now, they were eventually acquitted predominantly by a white jury in Ventura County, which sparked outrage over systemic racism within the police force. This was the same accusations that took place back in the Watts riots. Now, there was also tensions during this of the 1991 killing of Latasha Harlins, a 15-year-old African-American girl, by a Korean store owner, Soon Ja-doo, who received probation, further highlighting the racial and judicial inequities. Now, these riots went on, and you have to also understand the context of what was taking place in LA at the time, which was a massive crack epidemic, an explosion of gangs. The famous movie, famous movie with the, what was it called? Jordy, look up that. It was what movie that was. I remember. I love that movie.
Which movie?
What was it? It was just look up Sean Penn cop movie from the 1980s or 90s. And then tell me what that thing is. So
Okay.
what you had is this profiling, you had this division, you had, in 1992, there were 1,000 homicides in Los Angeles County. So there was this boiling that was bubbling up, this anger, this animosity towards the government, right? That wasn't supporting these inner cities that had really kind of moved into this horrific battle between police and government versus minorities in the area. Now, these were multiracial riots back then. About 50% of the arrestees were Latino and 36 African American. The riot spurred activism, particularly among Korean Americans, because there was the famous rooftop Koreans that came out to protect their own businesses, fully armed and shooting people that were trying to destroy their businesses. So, when you look at these, and both of these riots were pretty much spontaneous. There's not a lot of record of them being facilitated or organized by different groups, external groups like an Antifa or other groups of that nature. What you also had was some pretty horrific violence on the other side. Reginald Denny, a white truck driver, was pulled out of his cab and almost beaten to death. Fidel Lopez were beaten, all on live television. And so they had really gotten out of control. Now, approximately 12,000 people were arrested, including 6,345 on May 3rd alone. Arson, assault, curfew violations. And many were released due to police inability to identify individuals in the crowds. There were 63 deaths attributed to the riots, including 10 shot by LAPD or National Guardsmen. The second time the National Guard was called out to quell the riots. So this is not uncommon that National Guards are used to quell these types of things. Now, damages were about 1,000 to 1,100 buildings, including 3,000 businesses affected, with 3,200 Korean-owned stores. 45% of total damages were the Korean-owned stores that were looted and burned. Property damages approximately cost $1 billion, about $2.2 billion in today's dollars. And fires and looting disrupted the daily lives, closing schools, halting mail, transit, and leaving 20,000 to 40,000 people jobless from these riots. All right. Notably, there was all kinds of reactions to these. But again, they're not uncommon. And again, here we are. in June of 2025, where we're having riots. And we're on day 2 now, Jordy, right?
Mm-hmm.
About day 2.
Just
what was the
about.
movie? Did you find that?
Is it Colors or State of Grace?
It's Colors.
Colors.
1988. Yeah. That was, I mean, I remember that movie that came out, and that was the first time I ever knew what a Crip or a Blood was.
Mm-hmm.
That movie was a phenomenal movie, and it really showed the challenges that law enforcement face and that minorities and impoverished areas face. And I thought it was one of the better movies I've ever seen. I thought it was fantastic. And, now we're staring at this again, and we're staring at an unrest. And, when you dig in, a lot of misinformation or whatever you want to call it that's coming out is saying that this is being funded by nonprofit NGOs that are out there. I saw a bunch of posts that there's a full page ad for June 14th, which is, what is it? Will you look up what that is? That's supposed to, they say that it's the No King's Day. June 14th will be the No King's Day. And apparently what they're saying is that Donald Trump is now acting as a king. He's ruling with impunity by these illegal deportations, which when you look at the letter of the law, he has every right to be able to do. And the fact that so many pundits on the other side, I think, are saying, well, these people all deserve due process. So explain to me, in an already broken a judicial system that can't even service regular Americans in their need to get in to see their court cases heard, how are we going to be able to get to, let's call it 10 million illegals that are actually on the books that we know have come across the border? It's an impossibility.
No King's Day is scheduled for Trump's birthday. You know that?
That's right. No King's Day. Yeah. And that's gone out and there's reports coming out that advertisement was funded by a Walmart heiress. Now, I haven't been able to confirm that yet, but what that does is just, propel the exploding conspiracy theories that are going to come out of this once again.
And this is a cross-country protest. It's supposed to be.
Yes, this will be a nationwide protest by far. Yeah. So this could be the launch of, thousands and thousands and thousands of damaged businesses and interruptions and millions of dollars in damages and potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of people being injured and possible deaths.
It'll be the day after you hear this.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So, I think it's critical that we begin to take a step back and say, all right, well, why is this so debilitating for regular Americans? And I think the fact of the matter is that the impact that we're seeing from illegal immigration is profound, right? And you look at school systems that have been overwhelmed by illegal immigrants entering the public school systems, or our medical systems that have been overwhelmed, and certainly our police departments, active investigations. Now, I think all of this was a real precipice of what got President Trump into office. And he still has favorable, I just saw polls on CNN and Fox that he's still leading in polls. 53% of Americans still support the deportation, not of that woman and her little kid, but what they support is the deportation of violent criminals, right? Violent criminals that have come over. People that have, Venezuela, Colombia, all these places that have emptied their jails and sent people to the United States. Organized crime units. How many new cartel members are living on the streets in these cities to gain control of the drug trade, right? To get rid of the, what was used to run the drug trade. And that's why we're seeing gang wars and all over these places. Also, you begin to think about the impact on businesses. Now, the big thing I hear, and I have several friends that most likely use some illegal immigration for workforces. I mean, it's all over the place. It's they have ID cards, and that supposedly gives them the ability to hire these people. But But, the big argument on the other side is also nobody wants these jobs. I saw some lady on X, ranting and raving, and her whole point was, the who's going to pick the cotton argument. Like, who's going to do these jobs? Are white Americans, are wealthy Americans, are whatever Americans going to do these jobs? And for me, that's one of the most insulting arguments I've ever heard. Right. I mean, what I look at it is it's organizations and businesses paying a lower amount for cheaper wages that they know they have leverage over, who are illegal, so they can pay them bottom wages to do the work that whatever. And again, what's the solution to that? I'm not sure. I maybe we'll do a show in the future about that. But there's all these arguments on the other side that America is built on immigration, America is built on this. But when I tell you that the system is not capable of handling open integration, and all you got to do is look back throughout history. No matter what you do, look at a country that was overwhelmed by immigration. Just look at what's going on in Europe right now. All right. It changes the culture of particular areas. It changes the culture, changes the business opportunities, taxes out the federal or the local municipalities and their systems, policing system, firefighter, because all those things increase. But yet you're not getting any tax revenue coming in from these people because, they're not paying taxes. They're getting paid under the table, and much of their money they're sending away. Now, I know they do pay taxes. But let me tell you about this, right? What I said about this particular raid. Thank you for listening to this show. I apologize for the interruption, but we just want to give some love to one of our big sponsors, Firecracker Farms. Are you interested in spicing up your food? Then check out firecracker.farm. This incredible company enables you to with a incredible mixture of peppers fused into salt. You can spice up your eggs in the morning, your steak at night. I love this product. I use it every single day. And most of all, I love that this product comes from a family-owned business. Alex and his family and kids, they love growing the peppers, they love making the salt, and they love shipping it out in these beautiful packages and these wonderful aluminum salt shaker grinders. So please go give them a check. Check them out online at firecracker.farm. Type in your promo code at RUT15. That's Romeo Uniform Tango 15 to get your discount and support a family-owned business. Booyah, Firecracker Farm. But let me tell you about this, right? What I said about this particular raid is that they were going after Quang Chong Phan, who's a 49-year-old from Vietnam with unspecified criminal charges. Jose Gordillo Medranda Ortiz, a 42-year-old from Ecuador, convicted of cocaine distribution conspiracy. Victor Mendoza Aguilar, 32, from Mexico, convicted of assault with a deadly weapon and drug offenses. Delfino Aguilar Martinez, 51-year-old from Mexico, convicted of assault with great bodily injury. Rolando Venesacion Enriquez, a 55-year-old from the Philippines, convicted of burglary and sexual assault. So those were the individuals that ICE has come out and said they were going after. Now, what's the argument you're going to give me that those people should remain in the country? Just like the big hoo-ha of the individual they say was the dad and the father, and we now know they've released more records that individual was directly related to a human smuggling organization and he did multiple runs, dozens of runs, bringing illegals in. So that's illegal activity of an illegal immigrant. And so, is the solution to you that we tax our American system? We tax our tax dollars even more money in order to create a judicial fairness to these people? I don't see how that works financially. And all you got to do is look at some of the debt that's going on in various different places around the country, in particular our national debt of $38 trillion. Now, the other context I really want to go into is just the size and magnitude of undocumented or illegals that are in Los Angeles County. The rough estimate, it's somewhere between 900 and 950,000 undocumented immigrants in LA County, which comprise about 8 to 10% of the county's population, which is 10 million. All right. That's a massive number. How does that number impact the resources of the municipalities, right? There's a bunch of other ones. Pew Research estimates at 1 million. Some other ones, 800,000, somewhere around 800 to 1 million. We'll call it there. All right. Now, in the broader context, about 80% of the undocumented immigrants in Los Angeles County are Latino, 10% Asian Pacific, with the rest 3% being white. And that's according to a 2016. So it's probably a lot higher now. All right. Now here's the kicker. And this is the deep dive I want you to understand on this, because what you have to do is you have to affiliate something that's going to ground you into recognizing the deep impacts that you will suffer from if this type of thing comes to wherever you live. If you're in California or New York or wherever there's mass immigration, we have it in Florida as well too. All right, so here you go. All right, so this is, I asked my friendly neighborhood Grok, right? I asked about financing and what's taking place in California, funding from state and local governments to Los Angeles County. All right, now the numbers are a little tricky to put together, but try and stay with me. All right, so there's a Medi-Cali expansion for undocumented immigrants. All right, and this California's Medicaid program to all income eligible undocumented or illegal immigrants. From ages. All right, the cost, the California Department of Finance reported $9.5 billion for the cost of Medi-Cali coverage for undocumented immigrants. All right, with $8.4 billion from the state's general fund, and ready for this, $1.1 billion from emergency room visits and pregnancy care covered by, guess what? Federal funds. $1.1 billion of your taxpayer is going to pay for their emergency health care and pregnancy costs. This is $3 billion over the initial budget estimate due to higher enrollment. All right. And they rough estimates nearly 350,000 illegals are receiving this Medi-Cal coverage. All right. Los Angeles County share. While roughly 40% of Californians' undocumented population accounts for proportional share, assuming 40%, the county's undocumented immigrants may utilize approximately 3.4 to 3.8 billion of the state's Medi-Cal. All right, criticisms. All right, this is the next one. CalFresh. All right. CalFresh program started in October 2025. Undocumented immigrants age 55 and older will qualify for CalFresh, California's food stamp program, funded by the state for those ineligible for federal SNAP due to immigration status. All right, here you go. Ready for this? The cost. The state estimate is $113 million annually to provide food assistance to 75,000 older immigrants, illegal immigrants. And this is at its peak. Assuming 40% of the eligible population, Los Angeles County could see $45 million annually for the undocumented seniors. All right, immigration support, immigration legal services and support. The Department of Social Services, the DSS, funds immigration services, including legal aid for deportation defense. All right, this cost budget allocates, are you ready? $50 million to a general fund for DSS immigration and equity programs, down from, get this, down from 2023 and 24, which was $297 million to this program. All right, legal service, $10 million in cuts. All right, Los Angeles county share. Represent LA public-private partnership in Los Angeles provides legal service to about 2,000 undocumented immigrants, illegals, facing deportation, funded by $40 million since 2021, 5.5 million annually, totaling $15.3 million since 2023. There's a cash assistance program for immigrants. All right, this they don't have the correct numbers for that. There's an education assistance, right? Los Angeles County's large student population with 12.3% of K through 12 students with an undocumented status. All right, here's another one. Proposed unemployment. Didn't give me a number for the education, but you know that it's huge. That's under the California DREAM Act. Proposed unemployment benefits, $330 million to offer unemployment benefits to undocumented or illegal workers. It failed to gain funding, indicating no costs in 2025. All right, but there was a line item submitted. All right, Jordy, would you look up what California's shortfall on their budget is for this year?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, Health and Human Services, $1 to $5 million annually. Migrant services. All right, here you go. City of Los Angeles received $22 million in FEMA funds, right? Remember North Carolina, remember Florida, remember South Carolina, didn't get squat. $22 million in FEMA funds for 2024 migrant services. But this is federal, not local. With the city's $80 million budget shortfall, local funded for undocumented immigrants is limited and likely under $5 million. All right.
It looks like there's going to be the projected for 25-26 is $12 billion, mostly due to, looks like, the surging Medi-Cal costs.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's what Medi-Cal I have right here as I have a summary of all this. Medi-Cal, $3.4 to $3.8 billion. And that's 40% of the 8.4 state general fund. All right. So, when you start to think about these cost estimates and what's being spent on these people, how much funding they're receiving to be in Los Angeles County, why do you think they're protesting? Why do you think they're out burning cars down and in the streets? So you combine that, their funding, you combine that with this group internally that truly believes that they're on stolen land and that they want to, the head of Mexican, the Mexican state, it's like the head of their state senate or Congress, just showed up a map yesterday of the map from 1830 that had all of California, Texas being Mexican and saying this was our land. Essentially insinuating like, hey, everybody on the streets, go ahead, start a revolution, fight for your country back. And we also know that the president of Mexico has roots in socialism, and we also know that Karen Bass, the LA mayor, had an affiliation with a Cuban support group that supported Fidel Castro back in the 1970s. Now, don't get me wrong. When you go back and you look at her political record, she's done some pretty amazing things for minorities, certainly for inner city homeless people. She actually dropped homelessness when she came in as mayor last year. So there are some a historical record of her working across the aisle for programs to benefit minorities in poverty, people in poverty. But there's also, she does have a record of a socialist mindset that she is connected to. So you have the economic inspiration, or that's the wrong word. What's the right word I'm looking for, Jordy? The economic incentives. Mm-hmm. You have a certain political or ideological incentive, right? And then you also have the criminal element as well, too, right? Criminals are criminals. They don't care where they're committing crimes. They don't care what they're doing. All they want to do is foment crime, criminality, destruction, right? So Those three elements, what do they represent? They represent a significant challenge to the American ethos. They always have, and they always will. What we see in riots are nothing new. What we see in the backlash from the perceived overreach of the American government is nothing new, right? We've seen it almost divide and destroy this country itself back in the Civil War, right? We've seen veterans protest after World War I because they didn't get their benefits, and the U.S. government squashed that rebellion of veterans looking for their benefits. We've seen coal miners in West Virginia they're enraged that the companies were basically overworking them and utilizing them as slave labor and not getting paid the appropriate wages. So I'm definitely not against pushing back the American government, but to do so peacefully, right? That's your constitutional right, and I support that 100%. But when you start breaking the law and you start trying to injure, harm, or destroy other people's things, that's when you've crossed the line. So, how do we solve this? I don't know. I mean, there's a part of me that says you come in and drop the hammer. And then there's a part of me that recognizes, even things that I was a part of overseas, where you come in and you drop the hammer on a local population. What does it do? It just foments greater animosity and anger. Right? If you want to make somebody hate the government forever, right? What do? You kill a family member, you incarcerate them, you beat them to death, or whatever it might be. But there has to be law and order in doing it. And once you cross that threshold, man, the game is on. Now, what I would love to see more than anything else in the world is I would love to see Gavin Newsom sit down with Tom Homan, or sit down with Karen Bass and Tom Homan, or sit down with the president, or sit down, with the head of Kristi Noem and Homeland, and have a collective meeting in front of the public and beg for them to put hey, let's take a ceasefire to the protest. Let's hear the demands. But there is a fundamental issue that has taken place over the last 4 years. And that we have had a wave of immigration that cannot be sustained. And part of that wave has been nefarious elements that are criminals, that are butchers, that are savages, that are here to destroy the fabric of what America is. If we don't drop the hammer on them now, they will only gain strength, and they will only do more harm and damage to the American population. So, I ask everybody to support your local law enforcement, but also to support First Amendment rights. I know this, what I hate to see more than anything else, are those young women and children suffering. What I hate to see are those business owners suffering. What I hate to see are those police officers in that riot gear for 12 hours on, 2 hours off, and 12 hours on. What I hate to see is those young Marines being, summed up to, go out and face their own fellow Americans who maybe hate them or maybe don't. But I'll tell you one thing, if this continues and this summer gets hot and hotter and hotter, it's going to lead to something really negative. I hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, please like, subscribe, and share. And just think about what it takes to keep a society together. And I hope you support that. Godspeed.